Hello, friends. My name is Jennifer Freer. This is the first time meeting with me. If this is coming across your feed and you're not in a space to really receive what I'm about to give you, go ahead and save it and then come back to it later. But if you're able to jump in right now, let's go. So, today I'm going to talk about how to create from a space of intention and really how to release patterns that are just no longer working. So originally I was going to call this how to let go of the past, but I really want it to be on how to create your future with intention and purpose. Okay, so that's the code I'm going to be giving to you guys today. So I was reflecting on this because I think the last several days I've really been kind of diving into the past of really how do we let go of the past. And I think it's because I have a retreat coming up that I'm co-creating with a good friend of mine, and it's all about past lives and releasing, right, things that are kind of influencing our present moment and our future. So I was thinking about this process for me and how I've been able to let go of a lot of the stuff in my past, and how I continue to be aware of where I may be creating and projecting from the past so that I can see it and then do things differently, right? Because it's always a choice, and I'm not a victim to my circumstances. If something isn't working, I know it's because something within me doesn't want me to have it, it's trying to protect me, or is just seeing through it from a kind of, I want to say, like, unhealed perspective, in the sense that, like, it isn't of the highest perspective, basically, right? It's just something that's immature a little because of what I created, what story I created when it was created. If that makes sense. So really it came to starting to have more awareness in my body, right? We hear this all the time of the mind, body, soul being connected, and that the body is really a beautiful way to connect with what our thoughts are. And so I was noticing in the beginning of my journey of just becoming more connected to my body that I would find times where I wasn't breathing. Like I would just be doing something and then I would be like, I hadn't even taken an inhale, right? So that was interesting. And then the other thing was clenching. I would notice, and of course, I still struggle with clenching my jaw, like at night, right? I used to actually be somebody who self-soothed through sucking their thumb until the age of 30, because there was just like some stuff. This was how I knew how to self-regulate. But when I did it on a more conscious level, then the thumb sucking like didn't happen anymore, right? I also was like, oh, it's kind of cute that I thumb suck still. So I was like not as willing to let go of it. But that's another story. So I was noticing I would clench my toes. So if I was listening to something, or I just remember actually being at a mindfulness seminar and I was clenching my toes. And so I was noticing the energy of when we're clenching, right? When we're clenching the jaw, when we're clenching the steering wheel, when we're holding, a lot of times I'll like hold my right shoulder in, right, or hold it tight, and then the clenching of the toes, like it's a bracing for something bad to happen, bracing for something to happen. So I've got to clench and be strong. And I was thinking how different this is versus like babies, right? Who like they kind of know no fear and they'll just like walk off the couch or something like that and just fall off without clenching for disaster. And like we need this happy medium of still being able to recognize the past, in the sense of you don't go cross the street without but looking both ways type of deal, and not letting us be so programmed by it that we're in emotional reactivity state when it doesn't need to be there, right? So unclenching my toes or unclenching my jaw or releasing my shoulder blades down or being mindful about taking deeper breaths, this started to help me come into more relaxed state. And then I was allowed to kind of go deeper into my mind and say like, oh, okay, like this is what's coming up. This is why I don't feel safe. This is how I'm trying to make myself feel safe externally, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So Also, just like a fun fact I wanted to let you kind of in on is like when we clench our jaw, right? So we think about our mouth as representative of our throat chakra. So if you ever if I'm holding back, I'll get mouth what are the canker sores, right? Because I'm actually chewing or sucking on the inside of my mouth because I'm not allowing myself to express myself for whatever reason, right? So I'll notice that when I'm getting frustrated or angry, I'll have that. But if anyone has any sort of like mouth issues like that, that's a throat chakra issue. Well, our throat chakra is directly connected to our sacral chakra, which is our sensuality and creativity. So if we're clenching in our jaw, you can best believe we're tightening and restricting in our sacral as well. And this obviously, is our portal to creativity, to feeling pleasure, and all of the things. So it makes sense, right? Like even when we're having sex, like we let out sounds, right? Like it's very connected. So just as like a realization of like, okay, if I'm having issues in my mouth, like I probably have something going on in my sacral chakra as well. And you probably aren't being as creative or afraid to express yourself or something in that sense. Okay. So I wanted to also go into this, when I first started like becoming a practitioner of energy work, of meditation, yoga, right? Just like, and sharing my gifts, not only just doing it in my personal practice, but actually hosting meditations. It was obviously very like intense and scary. On one end, I felt so passionate and I would create workshops, but then when that workshop would come, I would say, I don't want anyone to show up. I don't know if I'm ready, right? And so I started to really being like, okay, well, what are you telling to the universe? Do you really want to teach? Because if you don't, then yeah, keep saying things like this, right? But if you really do and you want to move forward, like let's go ahead and just face these fears and stop saying things like that and work on why am I saying things like that, right? Fear of rejection, all of the things. So, but see, and how this relates to releasing the past and creating with intention the future. So a lot of my blocks, and sometimes this still happens to me. This is something that I'm continuously working through. But I am going to get through it. I think it will always be there, but it will be less, it'll have less pull, right, over my thoughts, is people not being able to understand me. So what happens, right, this is like when I first started doing Reiki, I was like, well, how am I going to explain what Reiki is? Like, oh, well, it's a Japanese technique that channels the universal energy and I channel that energy and I channel that energy with someone else and then blah, 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 right? How's anyone going to get it? Like, and really that's like such a surface level 3D explanation of what I actually do. So my soul even kind of feels ick talking about it. So if I'm talking about it to somebody else and I'm like feeling ick about it because I'm like, this is such a 3D answer, like I don't even want to talk about it. Right? So again, so this projection, this fear of not having people understand me, because there have been many, many times where I have not been understood or I had not been seen, right? That would make sense that I would get people who didn't understand me. The thing too is when we believe that people aren't going to understand us, our communication becomes murky, because if we're having connecting to the thought is the frequency. People don't understand me, and this is going on in my background as I'm speaking. I'm probably going to mess up, and then I'm going to judge myself for messing up, and then I'm going to be like, see, people don't understand me. It's blah, 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 right? So no, instead of being solution oriented, like, all right, well, my strong point isn't speaking yet. I'm going to get better. I'm going to show up. I'm going to learn. Like, I'll join Toastmasters. Like, I'm going to put in the necessary work so I can work on my communication so that I feel like I have strong communication skills and I'm able to say what I want to say. So the other part too is like, if we're thinking people aren't going to understand me, then all we're going to see is the people who don't understand us. There's always going to be people who understand us and people who don't understand us, right? But we don't need to, like, if we're dwelling in the people who don't understand us, the people who do have objections, the people who don't understand what Reiki is or why they need it in their life, the people, you know, like all, or yoga, or whatever modality, healing modality you're trying to get people to understand that will work. Like, if we're just focused on those people, then that's all we're going to see. And then we can never connect to the gratitude. Or we can connect to the gratitude, but in that moment, we're thinking people don't understand us and only focusing on what someone said in objection towards us, or that people aren't signing up to work with us. Then how could we be in gratitude? How can we be in that connection of, like, law of attraction, right? Connecting more of feeling good and seeing the people who see us, and then we attract more of that, right? Because we're paying attention to it. We're like, oh, this person saw me. Because that was the thing too, is sure, I was having these mental conversations of people don't understand me, but there were so many people who did. So many people who do understand me and do hear me and do see me. And when I speak from my heart and my truth, they're like, whoa, what just happened? Or like, I'll shake somebody's hand and they're like, why did I just feel like an electric bolt in the best way flow through me? Like, what is that? Right? But if I'm being like, oh, no one understands, like, it's hard for me to get people to work with me, it's hard for people, you know, they just want to live in their stuff, then like, that's all I'm gonna attract and that's all I'm going to see. And I can't be in gratitude. And we all know living in gratitude and appreciation is a very high vibration, and we get to be in flow when we're in gratitude. We get the ideas so that we can take that divine action and move on it, right? So I really thought that was important, of, again, releasing the past and creating with intention the future. If you expect, like, people are going to understand me, or, you know, the right people are going to understand me, or I'm just going to express what I feel because I know this is an important message, and I don't care if anyone understands me. Even if one person understands me, which one person always does understand me at least, then my creation is working. And when I'm in that state of flow, I'll get like random people like texting me like, hey, I need you for this. Hey, I thought of you today when this said, hey, this person mentioned your name today. Hey, you know, because like, again, I'm creating it. I'm feeling like, oh, people do get me. People understand what I'm saying. People are getting something out of my messages. I am living in my purpose, right? Like, I don't have to prove anything. So this is another, I wanted to bring this up too, because obviously I'm really into animals and getting the human and animal communication. But when we project the past a lot onto our animals, like a lot. Okay, so this especially happens like when there's like something traumatic, right? Like that happens. For example, okay, so I'm like, there's so many examples, but the first example I want to bring up is like the dolphin who lived in an enclosure and was upset and was actually ramming people in dolphin swimming experiences because she was angry. And the trainer every day anticipated her to be angry, right? Anticipated her to act out. So I was like, hey, stop anticipating that. Like, start from the fresh, start from the beginning, start from now. And that was able to help them kind of communicate, and she just kind of stopped the behavior. But this is so many times I hear people like, oh, I have a rescue. And then they've had the dog for 6 years. And so, and that dog has maybe like anxiety or something like that. And it's like, well, you're basically projecting the trauma of them being a rescue over and over onto them. So you have to, no, your dog's not a rescue. Your dog is your dog. Like, no, you know? So being aware of like where we project the past onto our animals. This also happens with when animals die and you get a new pet, and then you are projecting what happened with your previous pet, again, especially if it's traumatic, to try to prevent this other thing from happening. My cat Max was such a good teacher about this. I had a Siamese cat, indoor only, got him for Christmas for I was 8 years old. Max got out. Blue Jack was the cat's name, got out with him. Blue Jack was killed, but like got ran over right in our apartment complex parking lot. We found him the next morning. I could not keep, and Blue Jack, I was like very paranoid about letting him outdoor. So like he had never gone outdoor, so when he did get out, he didn't know what to do. He actually froze, and he like was laying in a parking lot space. Like he was literally laying where cars go because he like didn't have any street experience, where Max had tons of street experience and he was always getting out, like no matter how hard I tried to keep him in. So I couldn't keep Max in after that, even though that Blue Jack had died because of this tragedy. I couldn't keep him in. He would get out every time, and he wanted to get out, right? Like he wanted to. He was street smart. He would come home with different cats, like dropping him off in the morning. Like he was very capable. So I had to let go, even though this thing had happened to the other cat, because the cat got outside. That didn't apply to Max. And could you imagine if I kept Max inside all the time? He would be worse. Like he was already very territorial in the home and like peed in the home, and there was like things around that too. Like he was a very strong-willed cat. But I would not recommend projecting, or I've seen people who felt so bad because their pet, they like didn't know any better. So with their next pet, they're like super anxious and just want to do the best for their pet for this time. But then now this pet has anxiety because they're having anxiety, right? So it's like it's a cycle, and this is all because of the past. And it's like, where's the freedom? Where's the freedom in that for the pet or the animal, for the pet or the human, right? So I thought that was really important, just like as a pet owner, just to kind of reflect on that. If you do have a rescue, or if you did have something traumatic go on with your pet. I just met with a couple who they have some small dogs who are known for back problems, had 2 surgeries. The second surgery, the dog didn't like recover as good as the first one. And there's so much energy there, like that's stuck, that everyone in the family feels, you know? So anyway, this is really good too, like in the workplace, okay? Because I started really realizing how we kind of manifest and work in environments that are similar to our family systems. And there's a lot of dysfunctional workplaces out there, and some people do really well because they're like, no, I get this, right? Like I think my first like real job that I actually love, working at an animal hospital, I was able to anticipate the head doctor's needs because that was like just how I kind of grew up. Okay, it was just like anticipating the adults' needs or anybody's needs, so like everyone's like safe and happy and no one gets upset, right? Trying to control. So if you are somebody who has anxiety in your job, who you think you may always get in trouble, or you're worried your boss doesn't like you, or you have drama with your coworkers, I don't know, just like one of those things, like kind of be aware of if there's any similarities to your childhood, okay? Because that's just something fun to be aware of. But also, we kind of, if we're worried we're gonna get in trouble for something, or we're worried we're gonna get fired, we're probably gonna do something to elicit that, because again, it's the thought form, I'm gonna get in trouble, therefore it's like the self-fulfilling prophecy. You do something to where you get fired, blah, blah, blah. Usually 9 times out of 10, that's like, it's not, you're not getting fulfilled, and like there's some other deep work behind that. But this is just kind of like, I think really helpful in general, because this is also this is codependent behavior, right? Looking for security in somebody else. And obviously that would mean a lot in our job, because like we need money to pay the bills, right? So if we don't want to get fired from our job or something like that, right? So I wanted to share the story of, like, I was working at this psychic boutique, and the owner was really intense. I liked her enough to work for her, right? But she was very like strict on being on time, and a lot of different things. And so, which again, like I liked her, no issue. Like I still like her to this day. I think she's a powerful like person. But I was and I could see when I was working there how her energy was very similar to my mom's energy. And I was always afraid of messing up. I was always afraid, like, maybe I'm not a good enough psychic, or that was like the main thing, right? Or I'm going to do something to mess up. And so one time I was doing a healing and I left, I think it was either Palo Santo, and I left it on the dresser. I just saged somebody and I left it on the dresser. And then after the session was done, I noticed, which was really kind of irresponsible on my part, I noticed that I burned the dresser. So it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell this person who I didn't want to mess up in front of, right, that I burned her dresser, right? And why would I burn the dresser? Why wouldn't I just put it somewhere like normal, like on something that wasn't going to burn, right? And then I saw how I went to like the beating myself up. And so this is a cycle, this is a pattern. Here I am, self-fulfilling prophecy, like feeling guilty or feeling shameful about something, when in reality, like, people mess up, it is what it is. Like, I was already feeding my thought system, like, don't mess up, she's not gonna like you, you're not good enough, blah 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 blah. And so I, burned her dresser. And so I told her, and she's like, I'm very thankful, like, thank you for telling me who it was. And so no more sage allowed in the space. Like, none of the practitioners weren't allowed to use sage. And I just was like, oh my God, like, this is the worst thing ever, right? It turned out like not to be the best place for me anyway, because I was doing even psychic readings on a hotline, and most of the people who, especially on a psychic reading hotline, just want to hear yes or no answers. And just like, the reasons I don't like to do regular psychic readings is because it's not teaching anybody. First of all, you're going outside of yourself to someone else to see what they think about your life, which is like, that's not what I do. And then the second is like, you're not teaching them how to get there for themselves, right? Like, that's ultimately what we want to do. We want more people who know how to tune inside, who know how to control their life, who know that they are in control of their life. So if you're looking for a psychic to be like, this is the right decision, or when will you meet a man, or what are the things that are wrong with you that you need to heal, or whatever, it's like, no, like, you need to learn how to meditate, you need to learn how to get your mind still, you need to learn how to be and connect with your emotions. I can't even tell you how many people who are not in touch with their feelings, right? And so anyway, on a psychic reading, I will never forget, because again, it was like the worst thing ever. This lady complained about me. She said, she called the owner and said that she's running a scam, that I was really sweet and nice, but that I was not psychic at all. And it was because she wanted to know if this long distance relationship with someone she had never met before was going to work out. And right when she asked me that, I saw somebody in her heart, like a man. And I knew, I was like, oh, like, I knew it was a long relationship. And I was like, hey, did you just get divorced? There's somebody still in your heart. And she's like, well, no, I ended a long relationship. We were in a marriage, but we were like, the relationship was marriage type, but they were never married. And I was like, well, you need to do some forgiveness meditation, like forgiveness work. I recommended like Doreen Virtue, if you know who that is, like at the time. And she goes so mad and was like, this is not, I don't want links to a meditation, like, but again, so and so she got all upset and said that I was a fake and all this stuff. But here's the thing, right? Like, this is like, oh, people don't understand me, right? Like, and I was just like, I had enough awareness to be like, no, like, I know I didn't read that wrong. Like, she just wasn't able to hear it, because I do have a lot of powerful messages and I do go really deep, and a lot of times people aren't ready for it, but I would use that as like evidence of being discouraged, of like not allowing my messages to come out, or not getting better at communicating on what I want to say, because of these experiences. So it's just really, again, if you're don't want to continue to repeat cycles of like where you're working, who you're working for, really allow yourself just to kind of have that awareness. And then it's like, okay, if I want to work at somewhere where they do get me, they do understand me, they do see me, what does that look like? What does that feel like? The most important thing is, what does it feel like, right? So, yeah, there's that. But so one really great tool I've been kind of using this whole week, and this is obviously in alignment with like my other work that I do consistently do, and just like the deeper sessions and work that I've had on myself. But I was revisiting the Course in Miracles, and I was listening to a podcast about it, about one of the, I think it was number 7, but really like the first several lessons are about releasing the past, right? Because it's such a like incredible mind kind of game that it's like, what? It's like, it's everywhere, right? Like, especially your children, your spouse, like I said, your pets, your in-laws. Like, your in-laws are like one of the best people to apply, like to start to see how your mind and your energy can change things without those other people changing. Because if we're continuously looking at them through past lenses, how they've acted to other people, or maybe how they've come across to us, then, you know, like it doesn't usually go well. It just stays stunted. Like, everyone stays stunted, nothing grows, like it just, but instead of just like really releasing and allowing, having no expectations and allowing people to be themselves and not take it personally. And a lot of times the stuff that, you know, can trigger us are actually just way people are trying to communicate with us in a way that they care. And sometimes that just, we see, right, that like they could do it better, but because they're not doing it better, we're going to get mad at them, instead of realizing, looking through, like reading between the lines and seeing, oh, this person's saying this because they care about me, right? So anyway, this exercise is basically taking time like 3 or 4 times a day and looking at things like I'm in my room, right? My like studio yoga room. And so looking at, like, I have a futon in here, I have pictures in here, I have, you know, like deities and different things, and saying like, I see this painting through the past. I see this futon through the lens of the past. I see this fan through the lens of the past. I see this phone through the lens of the past, right? I see this notebook, this glass of water, this book, this like other notebook, right? All through the lens of the past. And what that really does is just allow us to become present, and also empty the mind and become really aware of, like, this is so much of the past. And even if something's good, like I have an altar right behind me, and it's like, even that, I see that altar through the lens of the past, right? So really allowing myself to become more and more present. When I become more present and I become more peaceful, everything in my world shifts. Like, everything in my world shifts. My husband will have more like in-depth conversation with me because he feels safe to do so, right? If I like, I'm really psychic. So sometimes it's like, sometimes it doesn't work because it's like I can feel things and then I become insecure because I want to fix it, right? Or sometimes it's not about me, but I can feel there's an energetic shift and I want to fix it and I want him to make me feel better, right? But when I'm in a space of where I'm already filled up, I've already like done, you know, meditated and done the things, done the work, released this past kind of projection of our relationship onto the now moment, then he's like kind of completely different, and will have conversation with me where I'm like, oh, I knew that was bothering you, but he didn't want to talk to me about it when I was feeling an insecurity. And it's not that he even knew that's what was going on, it's just his energy. So when we can become like this safe vessel, this peaceful vessel to have these honest conversations with each other, like, again, he doesn't have to meditate for me to have this conversation with him, right? Like, I was the one who needed to meditate. I was the one who needs to get my energy in a space. And of course, like, I can always initiate the conversation, but I'm talking about something deeper, and I'm hoping that it's landing for you. So if it is landing for you, let me know in the comments for sure. So yeah, that was kind of like, I hope I wanted to share those stories of just the way that sometimes in our subtle energy that we don't really realize how we're projecting from the past, and really how to create the future that we want is really expecting things to go well for us. There's a lot of us on the planet like who don't really expect things to go well, or how can I succeed at something when the world is so in this paradigm. Most of the world is like in an old paradigm, and we're transitioning in a new paradigm. And so I'm trying to be in the new, but how's that possible if everyone's in the old? Well, I'm not going to see anyone in the new if I'm in the old, like just focusing on the old, right? It just goes back to the people don't understand me type of deal. Because when I'm in that space, people understand me. Like, it's incredible, like the attraction that happens, or the right conversations that I have, or the people that like reach out to me randomly, or just like, again, it's just really magical. Or the conversations that I have with like my mom or my brother, or people who are like really, close to me, my husband, that are like deeply healing and growth and evolution. This the same thing goes for like for dating. If it's just like, well, there's nobody out there for me. Or I was working with a client once who was like, yeah, I tried dating in Vegas, but it's like, what do you say, that it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. And I was like, well, if that's how you feel, like, what, you're never gonna find anyone. Like, what? So we really have to look at what we're saying and what we're feeling. And again, this is not easy work. This is not like, oh, okay, like I get it. It's like you have to get it over and over and over and over again. And sometimes you have to like, you just have to be in the right moment to hear it, right? But yeah, that's really, oh, so if you're really ready to kind of release, and how do I get, because we can also have different ways we carry emotions, right? And carried emotion is emotion that we've carried from previous generations. So sometimes if you have reoccurring shame, or you have reoccurring guilt, or you have reoccurring anger, or something like that, and it's because it's carried, right? We're usually carrying it for our parents, or the previous people, for whatever reasons, just in our DNA. And there's a whole like another talk we could talk about in purpose and karma and reincarnation and all that stuff, but that's not what this this is about. Carried emotion. So like past life, that's why past life regression is so cool, because we're not only going from this life, like, yeah, that'll come up, but we're also going from like previous lessons that maybe we just haven't closed up yet for whatever reason. So if you want to we're doing a Kundalini Yoga retreat and past life regression in August 19th and 20th in Huntington Beach. So much fun. Like, let me know if you're interested. I'd be happy to send you the details. But also in my coaching sessions, like, we get out of this like victim mentality, or sometimes I also see like when you're really aware and you have. So in my sessions, we really release the past and the pattern thinking of things not working out for us, and heal those parts of us, and make it a very easy, accessible things to where you can do it daily, to where it's like some of the stuff you'll learn and it will feel really hard and you'll feel really heavy. But then it gets easier. Like, it really does. It gets easier, and you'll learn more tools, and you'll be able to process things faster, and you'll be able to look at things or look at shadows and be like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I'm definitely doing this here. Like, one of my shadows is pride. And then like, and I'm like, oh man, I am being prideful there. Like, I'm holding back who I like really am, because I'm afraid someone's going to judge me, or I'm going to get rejected, or someone's going to talk bad about me. Right. Or, but so owning these shadows and just being like, okay, but this doesn't need to be where I live. This is just, I get to see that this is happening, and then what's on the other side of this shadow, right? So the other side of like, I forget what pride is, like invisibility. Yeah. So, and that's where it's like the attraction of where like I don't really have to make things happen. It's just things just happen because I'm just being authentically me, and not worried if someone's gonna not like me. for what I have to say, right? Or talk bad about me, or tell people horrible things, or yeah, just like I could continue to go into that. So that's like really, I love to help people through that, just like really help release patterns of the mind, and really move into the future, and like consciously create from a space of feeling good, because it does get to feel good. It doesn't mean we're avoiding things, or that we'll never ever feel bad, and we'll never have hard things happen to us. That's not the truth at all. But we get to be more loving, compassionate human beings. And the more that we embody that, the easier it is for the rest of the world to do it as well. It's like holding that space, So let me know if you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching the whole way through. If you've made it up to this point, and I will talk to you later.